We want to call this joint standing committee on the state and local government of the Senate and the House Standing Committee on Local Government to order. Co-Chair Flannery, you have any remarks?
Ready to call roll?
All right, Secretary, please call the Senate roll.
Senator Rocky Adams, Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Herron, Senator Madden,
Here.
Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, Senator Mills, Senator Rawlings,
Here.
Senator Tishner, Vice Chair Elkins,
Present.
Chair Nemus.
Present.
Good. Madam Secretary, if you could call the roll for the House members.
Representative Ballman,
Present.
Representative Bray, Representative Brown, Representative Chester Burton,
Here.
Representative Doan, Representative Fleming, Representative Freeland, Representative Griffey, Representative Hampton, Representative Hart, Representative Imes,
Here.
Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative Maddox, Representative Meredith, Representative Raymer,
Here.
Representative Rorks,
Here.
Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Witten,
Here.
Vice Chair Neighbors,
Here.
Chair Flannery.
Here.
Will Commissioner Sawyer come forward? If you introduce yourself and it's all yours.
Matt Sawyers, Commissioner of the Department for Local Government.
Billy Johnson, Department for Local Government.
It's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair Flannery, members of the committee. We're here to update you on our guidelines for fiscal year 2025 to the Community Development and Block Grant Program administered by the Housing and Urban Development Federal Agency. We do this every year. This meeting, also by state and federal law, serves as our public hearing for all of our CDBG policy changes or what our current guidelines will be for allocating funds for this fiscal year. We have several members of the department here with us, including branch managers from our Federal Grants Division. We've got Jennifer Peters, Mark Williams, Travis Weber, and Gabe Nickel with us, and they're right behind me back here. We also have our General Counsel, Matt Stevens, Cole Sutton, one of our other staff members, and any other folks from the department that can answer questions relevant to our hearing today. CDBG is administered by DLG, has been for a very long time. Most of your communities are probably familiar with this program. A lot of the applications that we get for CDBG grants come to us through area development districts. One of the reasons is that all of these grants are through our agency are applied for by smaller communities. Your larger communities like Lexington, Louisville, Owensboro, Hopkinsville, Henderson, they have direct allocations. They're called non-entitlement communities. And that's how we generally award our funds to work with smaller local governments. CDBG requirements for us are that we spend 70% of our funds on low to moderate income individuals and projects that take in mostly low to moderate income individuals. A couple exceptions to that, or in case we have urgent need or we can eliminate blighted areas. The funding we expect to receive in 2025, hopefully around $26 million. We are proposing to allocate these funds in the following way, and it's pretty consistent the way we've done things in the past with very small changes. So one of our programs is for public facilities, and that would be your water and wastewater projects. And we work in conjunction with the Division of Water, Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, all of the communities that need these types of much needed projects in their areas. We're proposing around $8.8 million to be used in that area. We also have community projects that support volunteer fire departments, libraries, health centers, food banks, and senior centers. And we're proposing to spend around $5.8 million this year in that program. Our economic development program are your job creation activities. We'll spend hopefully around $4.8 million. That's what we have kind of pre-allocated to use in that program. Public services, since we have such a great need for recovery services in Kentucky, that's where most of those monies go, and we have around $2.6 million pre-allocated to go toward Recovery Kentucky. And then lastly, we have our housing program that we're expecting to spend around $3.3 million on low to moderate income housing programs across the state. And in a lot of cases, we work with the Kentucky Housing Corporation on those programs, and we actually file a joint plan with KHC every 5 years. So we work hand in hand with them, particularly on housing issues. And I do want to go through some of our guidelines changes for 2025 that we're proposing. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read some of these just to make sure that the public has a full understanding of what changes we're making and can ask us any questions to fulfill the responsibilities that we have under the law. On our appendix, we would like to delete the Community Emergency Relief Fund and turn it into a now standalone document. Given that we've had so much disaster relief in the last several years, that fund has not been used quite as much through the regular CDBG program, so we're just going to pull it out, make it a standalone, and not be part of kind of that group that I talked with you earlier. But nothing's changed. We'll still have eligible projects in those areas as needed. Page 11, community projects amount, we're just going to change that from $750,000 to $850,000, so just upping that a little bit. And generally we'll do this just based on the need we're seeing in a 2-3 year cycle. Page 23, we're going to delete CDBG community project supplemental funding. Due to unforeseen rising construction costs, CDBG projects funded between 2018 and 2023 are eligible to request CDBG funding as a means of a last resort to ensure projects are completed in a timely manner. Total CDBG funding may not exceed $1 million combined between initial CDBG grant award amount and supplemental funding amount. Supplemental CDBG funding may only be utilized to cover cost overages associated with the base bid. Requests for supplemental CDBG funding must include the following, and those are things like written explanation, copy of the certified bid tabs, copy of the minutes from each bid opening, copy of the final detailed cost estimate, and written commitment on the contractor's letterhead from the lowest bidder certifying the will hold their bids from 90 days from the date of bid opening. So this is just to verify for the state and local government, the state and federal government, that these supplemental funds are truly indeed needed. And of course, we know that in the vast majority of cases they are because of cost overruns over the last few years. Line F, table information's changed, $15,000 to $30,000. 10 years, first 5 years, 100% remains, 20% annually after 5 years, and $30,000 to $100,000. We combined it into one section, so it's basically just administrative changes, just verbiage changes, nothing really changing much here. And if you have any questions over any of these, feel free to ask those. Under Priority 3, language changed from and or have less than a 1-to-1 match and has a minimum match of 20%. So we've added new language in our public facilities design only criteria. And this is in a situation where we've had a number of projects come to us over the last several years that haven't had design fully vetted out and fully proposed to us when they submit their project. So it could be a great project. It could be something that we really want to do, something that's desperately needed in the community. But if all the design fulfillments or all the design needs haven't been fulfilled, then we'll end up lots of times in a situation where those projects have to come back to us, and we'll end up working with a design engineer on the back end. And so this will just save us an extra step there, hopefully, where we can kind of break it up into a two-step process for larger projects where they can come into us and ask for design money. Then they can come in for the grant award for the larger project. So we evaluate these always on project need. If it's a necessary and reasonable expenditure of CDBG funds, project effectiveness. Our staff is highly trained by HUD and works with sister states all across the country on making sure that there's a full understanding of what the federal law is, what it requires. We have to have all of this documented. So some of this is just technical jargon that we use internally to make sure a project is eligible for CDBG, because worst case scenario, if you don't follow these steps, then you can go back and have problems post-award, post-project completion, and you get the federal government asking a lot of questions. Did you make sure that this was a needed project? Did you make sure that this was a necessary expenditure of funds? All of those things. Basically, the rest of it, it's in your packets. It's really just mostly just administrative tweaking here or there. There's nothing particularly substantive in the changes beyond the things that I just addressed. So I'm happy to take any questions. I know that's a lot. If you have any questions about individual projects in your area, we can follow up after the fact. If you have any questions about how the program runs or how awards are allocated or how projects are ultimately chosen, I'm happy to address those as well. Thank you so much.
Surely we have some questions. Everybody understood all that, read the packet? Okay, so no questions. Do you have anything else?
I don't believe so. All the public can find this information on dlg.ky.gov. So
Do we have
any of your constituents are interested in knowing where they can find the information about this and other programs that we have at the Department for Local Government, they can find all of those there. We run several great grant programs, loan programs through our agency.
Thank you. We have any comment from anyone in the audience, any public comment? I see none. I have motion on the bill? On that bill, it's not really. Do I have a motion from the Senate on the block grants? Madam, please call just a voice vote, okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chair, can I put my attendance on record, please?
Do I have a motion from the House Committee that the 2025 block grant application and the Section 108 loan guarantee program meet the standards and criteria set out in KRS 45.353? I have a motion, a second. All in favor? Vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, vote nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Senate members, we're dismissed.
We're going to take about a 5-minute break before we start the House local government meeting.
We're adjourned. The Senate is, yes. House. Excuse me.
Down there quite a bit, yeah.
Representative Chester Burton?
Tony.
Good morning. How you doing, sir? Good to see you. Doing well. See you, man.
I just walked in. Well, I have another committee going on right now, so I think this is where we're at, but I just came in, I'm like, we put my name.
Yeah, the community.
That's the first time on Yes. And this is actually the first time that we've ever done a joint meeting during session. Oh, see, I've never been on them.
No money for North.
Steve first. Got it.
No, they talked to both of them.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. Who wants to adopt the sub? Yeah. Sorry about that.
That makes sense.
Patrick, why do you Excuse me? Sorry, can I squeeze around y'all?
I just want you. Yeah. I think you the kids better. Vince's
Well, I mean, I'm sure this is coming back. This is not going away. We know how this works. I just don't understand the functionality of adopting the sub. He had said that it was to give an opportunity for the conversation around Steve's bill and the incorporation thereof. But Steve's bill, I mean, I guess it's materially different.
What it is.
If everyone can please take their seats. The fourth meeting of the House Standing Committee on Local Government is called to order. Will the committee assistant please call the roll?
Representative Ballman. Representative Bray. Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Chester Burton. Representative Doan.
Present.
Representative Fleming. Present. Representative Freeland.
Here.
Representative Griffey. Representative Hampton.
Here.
Representative Hart.
Here.
Representative Imes.
Present.
Representative Lewis.
Present.
Representative Maddox.
Here.
Representative Meredith. Representative Raymer.
Here.
Representative Rorks.
Here.
Representative Stalker.
Present.
Representative Witten.
Here.
Vice Chair Neighbors.
Here.
Chair Flannery.
Here. It appears that we do have a quorum present, and we are constituted to do business. Do any members have any introductions they'd like to make? Chair recognizes Vice Chair Neighbors.
So this morning, I do have some guests that are here with us in the committee room. I have some young students from the Cumberland County Civics Club. If you guys give us a wave. So this group is very active back home in Cumberland County. They hold their own fiscal court meetings every month, and they also attend Tourism Commission meetings, the Industrial Development Authority meetings, Chamber, Board of Ed, City Council, and just too many to mention, actually. And they're very active in their community doing food drives and toy drives. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize their attendance in our meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Neighbors. Representative Witten.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to mention a special guest. Tanya Higgins is here today from Louisville. She is here to listen to the testimony of House Bill 194. Keon Higgins, which the bill started, is her grandson. So just wanted to make her welcome today.
Thank you, Representative Witten. Any other members that have guests that they would like to introduce? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the bills for consideration. We have 4 on today. We are going to pass over House Bill 7. Representative Bray has been ill and is not here this morning. We are also passing over House Bill 173, sponsored by Representative Dotson. I spoke with him over the weekend, and as of now, we think this issue may have been taken care of by Louisville Metro. So the first bill that we will consider is House Bill 194, sponsored by Representative Witten. Thank you, Representative Witten. If you could introduce yourself and any guest, and please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Susan Witten. I am State Representative for District 31 in Eastern Jefferson County.
Hello, I'm Kira Donk. I live in Oldham County.
Thank you, Chairman Flannery, Vice Chair Neighbors, and fellow committee members for listening to our testimony this morning about House Bill 194. This is a simple but important bill that is sure to protect children and save lives. This bill would require animal control officers to undergo training, either in person, virtual, or digital, to identify child abuse and neglect, as well as obligates them to report any such concerns. Animal control officers are often the first to witness warning signs of abuse in a household. By equipping them with the training to identify and report child abuse, we can strengthen Kentucky's child protection network and help prevent tragic cases of neglect and mistreatment. And to speak briefly on this bill, I'd like now Kira Dunk to say a few words.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. Kentucky is still one of the worst in the nation for child abuse. Kentucky child abuse rates have improved. However, we are still twice the national average. Through my research in the past years, I discovered The Link, a national organization that puts together decades worth of research on the connection between animal abuse and child abuse. There is a significant correlation between animal abuse and child abuse. Our goal of this bill is to train animal control officers to spot signs of child abuse and neglect, empowering these public servants to help some of our most vulnerable children. The data shows that in homes with both pets and children, 88% of physical child abuse cases were at homes that animal control had already visited. Louisville Metro has put in place a similar ordinance. In 2024, the animal control officers that underwent this training sent 42 reports to LMPD in the cabinet. House Bill 194 is named Keon's Law, after Keon Higgins Jr. In discussions with Joy Keeley in 2023, she told me Keon's tragic story. He was a kind 10-year-old boy whose life was cut short by someone who was supposed to be protecting him. Animal control went to his house 24 times before he was killed. Kentucky has sent God enough angels. We need to step up and help guide these babies out of the darkness. This bill is another tool in the toolbox for law enforcement to keep the children of the Commonwealth out of harm's way. Thank you.
And we'll take any questions if the committee has them.
Any questions from members of the committee? I see one. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to thank both of y'all for bringing this to us to consider, and I encourage everybody to support this because I think it's vitally important that these officers that go out and visit these homes on abused animals and so forth. There's a direct correlation to that. Being in the mental health field, we have seen that come through our offices as well as my colleagues have seen this as well. So I just want to say thank you very much for taking the initiative and going through the process to bring this more to light. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Representative Stalker.
Thank you, Chair. Rep. Whitten, thank you so much for bringing this bill. This is incredibly important. As a former foster parent and have had children in my home who've experienced abuse and neglect and have been removed, anything that we can do to get ahead of catching child abuse is important. My question specifically is around the time frames that have been laid out as far as I think we're giving folks, this is not going to go into effect until January 31st of 2026. Is that correct? It says animal control officers employed, appointed, or contracted with after January 31st of 2026 shall complete the training within 120 days of being employed, appointed, or contracted. And what I'm curious about is two things. Why this particular timeline? Can we up that? And part of that, your response might be, and my other question is how many individuals are we looking to get trained?
Yes. Thank you, Representative Stalker. The timeline certainly can be upped. We currently have training in place, both locally and virtually. So the main thing is just to give the other cities that may not currently be doing this the time to implement this.
All right. Seeing no other questions, I believe we are ready for a vote. All those in favor vote aye. All those against vote no. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baumann. Representative Bray. Representative Brown.
Yes.
Representative Chester Burton.
Yes.
Representative Doan.
Pass.
Representative Fleming,
Aye.
Representative Freeland,
Yes.
Representative Griffey,
Yes.
Representative Hampton,
Yes.
Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Lewis,
Aye.
Representative Maddox,
Pass.
Representative Meredith, Representative Neighbors,
Yes.
Representative Raymer,
Yes.
Representative Rorks,
Yes.
Representative Stalker,
Absolutely yes.
Representative Witten,
Yes.
Chair Flannery.
Vote aye. Here's the ayes do have it. Motion carries with favorable expression that the bill should pass on the House floor. Thank you all. All right, next up, last bill on the agenda is sponsored by the chair. I'm going to remain seated here, but call House Bill 490. Have some guests. If you all could make the table. Before you all introduce yourselves, we do have a motion on Committee Sub PHS 2. Have a motion. Second. Second, Representative Witten. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes do have it. All right, do we have everyone seated that is going to testify in favor of the bill? We do. All right, gentlemen, if you all could introduce yourselves for the record, and then please proceed with testimony.
Liam Gallagher, Americans for Prosperity.
Jason Edward, consultant for Airbnb.
Vincent Fralici, Airbnb.
Steve West, Senate's 27th District.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Vincent Fralici, and I serve as the policy lead for Airbnb for the Great Lakes and the Smoky Mountain region. I reside in Arlington, Virginia. Thanks for the opportunity to testify before you this morning. Airbnb is an important part of thousands of Kentucky residents' lives, with over 33% of Kentuckians who host and share their homes telling us they use the extra funds to stay in those homes. Last year, fellow Kentuckians used their entrepreneurial spirit to generate over $580 million into the state's economy by welcoming over 1 million guests into their homes. These Kentuckians kept over $150 million in extra income because Kentucky's Airbnb hosts keep on average 90 cents of every dollar that someone spends on an Airbnb. Sharing powers small towns and big towns in Kentucky. In 2023, 8,600 tourism jobs were supported by Kentucky's Airbnb hosts, which in turn generated approximately $354 million in income for local workers. When it comes to taxes, Airbnb guests generated and Airbnb remitted $16 million in 2024. Of that $16 million, about half, or just over $7.5 million, was sent to cities and counties for their occupancy taxes. About $7 million was sent to the state for state sales tax, and about $1.7 million also to the state for its 1% state tourism occupancy tax. Of the $7 million in occupancy taxes remitted for our guests on behalf of their hosts, $3 million was remitted, a little over $3 million was remitted to Louisville and Jefferson County, who uses it for their convention center bonding and sports authority, and over $1 million was remitted to Lexington, Fayette County. Airbnb is here today because we support House Bill 490. If enacted as written, Airbnb can and will begin to collect guest occupancy taxes on behalf of hosts in the remaining jurisdictions in the Commonwealth where Airbnb does not currently collect and remit. We will work with localities and their local tourism agencies to begin collecting local transient taxes as soon as 30 days after enactment. House Bill 490 removes regulatory and legal uncertainty and confusion for Airbnb and will mean that all of our competitors should hopefully begin to join us in remitting to every city and town in the state. House Bill 490 will also make it easier for all of Kentucky's short-term rental hosts, whatever platform they use, ours or our competitors, to automatically have their guests charged the local transient tax, withheld from their payment, and then sent directly to their local tax authority. House Bill 490 will complete the work of House Bill 8 by calling on localities to harmonize their collection system while keeping it local. House Bill 490 is very similar to what the state of Virginia did in 2023 when it mandated harmonization requirements on their local tax commissioners when it came to collecting occupancy taxes from accommodation intermediaries. We applaud the sponsor for crafting House Bill 490 in a way that harmonizes, not centralizes, tax collection. House Bill 490 provides for the electronic filing of local room taxes, reducing the administrative burden on local tax authorities related to tracking down lost payments and paper returns. House Bill 490 will end confusion and allow us to collect and remit everywhere because House Bill 90 creates a standardized and uniform local transient return so that we and all platforms can fill in the same data on the same form locally for all 100 cities across the Commonwealth. The bill also creates a uniform due date for occupancy taxes so that all platforms can pay cities directly on one day during a reporting period. It also creates an electronic method to file and pay, even if just an email address and a town payment page, allowing for fast filing and payment, as well as reducing the administrative burden of tracking down any lost returns and payments in the mail. And then lastly, it creates a source of truth at the state level. It's a simple website maintained by the Secretary of State that lists the local occupancy tax rate for every jurisdiction, contact information for the local authority, and the locally approved means for electronic payment and filing. This will let us know that we are collecting and charging the intended local rate and provides us with the necessary information to accurately collect and remit these taxes. All of these harmonizations, along with the website that lists the local tax rates, will end confusion and allow Airbnb to start collecting transient occupancy taxes in localities as soon as 30 to 60 days after enactment. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership on creating House Bill 490. We support your efforts and look forward to your and the committee's questions.
Before we take questions, we do have some other people at the table to testify. Want everyone to be mindful of the time. There will be some speakers that will be, I'm assuming, opposing this, so and probably plenty of questions for all parties. So let's be mindful of the time. Thank you. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to present today, and thank you for allowing me to be part of House Bill 490. I've been working on some similar provisions on the Senate side, and I'm going to speak briefly on just part of the bill that I've been involved in, and that involves the regulation of short-term rentals. And so the language that's in my part of the bill, it's very, very simple. It says, a local government shall not adopt or enforce any ordinance or regulation that requires a conditional use permit or imposes density-based restrictions. Those are the two main things it does, but it does allow cities and counties to adopt ordinances for noise pollution, parking, etc. And the reason for these provisions in this bill is things that are currently happening across the state, but I represent Lexington-Fayette County, part of Lexington-Fayette County, and the city has enacted an ordinance which is very draconian to short-term rentals, especially Airbnbs. It affects VRBOs and others, but especially Airbnb, and it basically shuts them down. And the way it works is you must apply, in order to have an Airbnb, you must apply for a variance with the city. And the part of the process is you have to talk to all your neighbors. And in some cases, you may have 110 neighbors or more. And they have to sign off on your ask, and it moves through the process. And many times, what this has done is to greatly restrict new Airbnbs in Lexington. They've actually gone a step further. And so if I believe it's 100 acres. If you have 100 acres out in the county, 10 acres out in the county, and you want to put an Airbnb in, that is prohibited as well. So it's not limited to the downtown urban service area. It's also out in the county now. And so that's what's happening. What's actually worse is, in my opinion, if you go through the variance process, you check all the boxes, and you make it, you're fine. Many times these variances will not be adopted, but the way the law is written, the way planning and zoning works, it's so subjective that, as with many planning and zoning issues, if you know the right person, maybe you get your Airbnb through the process. And so this part of the bill just simply states you cannot do that. You cannot use these ordinances or variances and density restrictions to regulate Airbnb short-term rentals in this way. For me, it's a basic property rights issue. Many people have purchased these properties with the intention of putting in an Airbnb, and now they found out they can't. And so, in effect, their property has been taken from them. The value of their property has been taken from them. If you have a house that could be an Airbnb, it may be worth $100,000, $200,000 more than without the ability to do an Airbnb. The opponents of these provisions coming behind are probably going to stand on the idea of home rule. And if you sit in this committee, all the time, as legislators here, we have to make decisions on where home rule applies and where home rule does not apply. And home rule does not apply when you're up against the state and U.S. Constitution, and where the state has a compelling interest in seeing this as standard across the state. And we have a certain obligation to set the guardrails for commerce in the state, and I think this flies in the face of that. One other important thing, as I end, a big reason why this is so important to the state of Kentucky and why the state of Kentucky has a compelling state interest is tourism. When people from outside the state want to visit Kentucky, especially young people, they're used to having an Airbnb option. They're used to having a VRBO option. And people love it. They want to do it. If they want to go on the Bourbon Trail, if they want to go to the track, if they want to go visit any of the tourism, ideas that main tourism attractions Kentucky has to offer, they're expecting to have that Airbnb option. And if they don't have the Airbnb option, I think you'll see a decline in tourism across the state. And so that's the reasoning for the bill. Really appreciate being part of the conversation and being allowed to speak. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just very less than 1 minute, point on your bill. Vince touched on it, but I want to amplify the point that this in no way, shape, or form is a centralized tax collection bill. I apologize for all the calls that you guys have been getting over this bill. I don't think it's been fairly portrayed to you what this bill is. In no way, shape, or form is this centralization. We did have a centralization bill last year. This is a bill that passed in Virginia, was bipartisan, was highly successful, and actually helped create more money for local tourism boards. I know our friends at the Secretary of State's office have some issues with what they're tasked with in this bill. I pledged to them that we will work with them to make it easy or and deal with them however they want to. We appreciate their help in considering it. And one point on Senator West's part of the bill, and thank you both for bringing this, is it's not just the conditional use permit, it's picking winners and losers. If you have an Airbnb and your friend moves in within 600 feet of you in Louisville or Lexington, and I believe Frankfurt, you don't get an Airbnb no matter what, in perpetuity. So it is a complete denial of property rights. And with that, I'll turn it over to Liam Gallagher with Americans for Prosperity.
All right, Mr. Gallagher, if you could keep your comments very concise. We have one person on Zoom that I do want to speak briefly, and I want to give enough time for the opposition to speak on this.
Yes, sir. Simply, Americans for Prosperity is here today to support the substitute version of the bill. Property rights are an important issue, endowed in the founding of this beautiful country that we all call home. John Locke wrote often about the rights to life, liberty, and property. The excessive use of conditional use permits to shut down people having small businesses in their home is a problem for Americans for Prosperity. States like West Virginia, Tennessee, and Indiana have passed similar reforms, and we're asking the Commonwealth of Kentucky to do the same.
I believe we have joining us on Zoom person from the Tax Foundation. If you could introduce yourself for the record, please, and give us your elevator speech.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Jared Walzak, Vice President of State Projects at the Tax Foundation. Appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I will keep it brief. One of the principles of Tax Foundation that we talk about for state taxes is simplicity. There should be simplicity of compliance and of administration of state and local taxes. And frequently with local taxes, that's not what we see. And that's not just in Kentucky, that is across the country. With sales taxes, 35 of the 38 states with local option sales taxes have central administration, central collections. With other taxes like transient taxes, transient room taxes or occupancy taxes, it's much more of a mixed bag. 12 states are fully centralized for that. 27 states are at least partially centralized. And then of the remaining states that do have these taxes, Kentucky is one of the 20 that is not. And this, of course, creates significant additional compliance costs for those involved. Now, there are challenges, obviously, for a state, and there's opposition when we talk about full centralization. So the bill here is not a centralization bill. It is a harmonization bill. It's what Virginia did, has been mentioned. It is a much simpler approach. It doesn't have all of the benefits of having a single form, a single way to comply with all of these taxes, but it accomplishes a significant portion of that by harmonizing what the form looks like, allowing it to be remitted electronically, so there's no concern about paper forms or the processing of those, ensuring, again, same dates, ensuring that those complying have the opportunity to actually see a true list of all of the local taxes that they have to comply with that they can rely on. This results in a significant reduction in compliance costs to us. It's just consistent with the basic principles of taxation that if you are going to impose a tax, there shouldn't be unnecessary costs in complying with that tax. This sort of approach increases compliance, it reduces those costs. It to us seems like a good government way to make a positive step towards reducing the very significant burdens associated with complying with all of these different local transient room taxes across the Commonwealth. And given time limitations, I will leave it at that.
Thank you. I thought you were heading to the penthouse on that elevator speech, but thank you. I do appreciate it. I'm going to pass on questions right now. Looks like we have two organizations I'm going to allow come to the table. Mr. Cheney, Mr. Phillips. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves for the record, please, and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that on? J.D. Cheney, CEO of the Kentucky League of Cities.
Hank Phillips, President CEO of the Kentucky Travel Industry Association, KTIA.
Please proceed.
I assume, Mr. Chairman, you want elevator speeches, so I'll try to do the same. We do appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony here. I'll get right to the point. The League of Cities, this is no shocker. Brace yourselves. We are opposed to House Bill 490. We're opposed to House Bill 490 in its original form. We're opposed to House Bill 490 in its amended form. In fact, maybe even a little more with the combined preemption provisions along with the taxation. You just heard testimony from Airbnb that this bill is about trying to be sure that local governments get paid, and this bill is going to make it happen. That may be true, but there's a much simpler solution. How about Airbnb pay the taxes that have been due under House Bill 8 since 2002, like most every other online platform, local hotel or motel that is engaged. Instead of just paying the tax, Airbnb has come to the state legislature, presented a bill that it deems a compromise, albeit one that imposes mandates on local governments to adopt electronic payment systems, enlarges state government with forced reporting requirements to the Secretary of State's office. And far from a compromise, the proposal includes a provision that was not agreed upon with any stakeholders in current pending litigations where Airbnb is a defendant for ignoring the duly enacted laws of the Commonwealth in collecting and remitting taxes. Rather than reward Airbnb for its blatant disregard of our state's law, our humble request to the committee on the first part of 490 is to allow the pending litigation to go forward and hold the company accountable to begin complying with the law as it's enacted and allow this litigation to go forward. With regard to the House Committee substitute integrating the provisions of House Bill 110, the irony is not lost on local governments that in one breath the legislature expresses its anguish about the severity of the housing crisis in Kentucky, and with the next gives life to legislation that threatens to greatly exacerbate it. The House Committee substitutes, as you heard, testimony on. It strips the tools from local governments to be able to maintain the character of their communities and neighborhoods by requiring cities and counties to treat short-term rentals the same as other residential uses of property. It's another one-size-fits-all bill that tries to impose a statewide rule when you're dealing with not only cities being unique and counties being unique, but neighborhoods within those cities being unique. And that has been intimately a local issue. And if you're not convinced by the home rule argument or the fact that local citizens ought to be able to govern themselves, I would urge you to take some time to look at the impact on constituents. We don't have to speculate. You can look online. You can call some fellow state legislators in states that have passed bills like this before, just like this around the country. And you can see that those are places where states of emergency have been declared to deal with the lack of housing supply, where citizens that teach, protect, or otherwise serve the community can't find an affordable place to live. There are places where neighborhoods are no longer neighborhoods, but rather a collection of investor-owned short-term rentals in the cul-de-sac, and places where long-term rentals and affordable single-family homes inventories are non-existent. While I won't take any more time talking about those details, I do want to agree with the proponents of the bill on one issue. This is about property rights. While it is about the property rights of owners who want to turn their residential properties into businesses, and businesses who want to buy homes to turn them into businesses, it is also about the vested rights and interests and well-being of other property owners and how they maintain the character of their neighborhood and use of property. And that really requires a delicate balancing act between those interests, and it's one that has been traditionally filled by local governments in weighing those benefits to achieve optimal outcomes for communities. We urge you to vote no on the proposal as amended.
Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the opportunity to bring to you the views of the tourism industry on this bill, and I'm going to speak primarily to 490 in its original form, the local tax-related aspects. And I think it would be good, and I'm going to be very brief, it would be good to start, though, with some baseline information. State law provides for authorizes the creation of local tourism commissions and the means by which their operations are funded. Then in turn, local governments establish the commissions and enact the transient room tax locally for their operation. A key core point is that those funds from that local tax are the lifeblood of these tourism commissions. Those taxes are paid by lodging and accommodations businesses, hotels, motels, and the like. The tourism commissions are essential to tourism in their communities. They exist to market and promote, to attract visitors, and the economic benefits those visitors bring with them. Now, fast forward to the current. As has been mentioned, House Bill 8 was enacted in 2022, became effective January 1, 2023, and included specifically a requirement that made it crystal clear that short-term rental platforms like Airbnb, like Vrbo, and the others are required, along with the hotels and all the others that have been paying this tax, this local tax forever, made crystal clear that the short-term rental platforms are required to pay the tax as well to the local jurisdictions. Well, since then, Airbnb has refused, except in a few jurisdictions where way back in 2019 they voluntarily agreed to pay the tax. But in the large majority of jurisdictions since January 1, 2023, they have refused to do so. What's critically important and extremely interesting to note is that from day one of House Bill 8 becoming effective, their largest competitor, Vrbo, has paid the local taxes, all of them, without question, on time and to the great satisfaction of the local governments receiving those monies and the tourism commissions that depend on those monies. So, I think it's really important to hear what Airbnb is not saying. They haven't come in to tell you that they aren't required by law to pay this tax. They haven't said that. They haven't come in to say, we want to change the requirement that we pay the tax. What they have said is, we, Airbnb alone, want you to dictate to local governments and tourism commissions how we, Airbnb, will pay the tax. Not Vrbo, because they're already paying. Not hotels, because they've paid since this tax came into existence. They are asking you to set the rules for Airbnb specifically and alone. And in doing so, they haven't said a word about those taxes they've owed since January 1, 2023. So,
all right, let me stop you there. So if this bill were not to pass, we've got about 10 days left in the General Assembly. How does this bill failing get you all paid?
It gets us paid because of the lawsuit we filed against them, which is intended to establish by the court that they owe the tax.
Okay.
Also, and they are aware of this, we have said that as soon as this session is over, since this proposal is the first proposal they've presented to us or to you all other than their earlier attempts to get centralized collection, we are willing to sit down and talk about how we can do this, but not under the pressure and the frenzy of a short session when we were first made aware of this proposal after the session was already underway. So,
all right, gentlemen, here's the good news for y'all today. We have two members that are absent. Sometimes the math doesn't work out in people's favor, so we're not going to be voting on this today. Maybe we will address this at another time, but I do want to take the, personal privilege to make a couple points here. So first with the, KLC, I understand your point. I get where you're coming from on this. I have disagreements with that. But there's a saying in the law that bad facts sometimes make bad law. My concern here is that bad local legislation may create legislation that you all consider even worse. So I think what we're seeing here, at least to the Senate Bill 110 portion of this bill, is a very hostile to personal property rights. It's very bad for our tourism economy, and I'm somewhat perplexed by the KTIA's position on this, because these short-term rentals are very much needed for the Kentucky Derby when we host the Breeders' Cup, Kentucky Bourbon Trail, all huge parts of our tourism economy that are very important. And quite frankly, this is a big part of our business now, and a business economy. And I think that what these local entities doing are actually doing something very, very bad for business. And I'm actually surprised not to see more business advocates show up and support this. As to the lawsuit, I filed 490 in its original form to hopefully fix that problem. I think it needs to be fixed. I think HB 8 in its original form has a lot of compliance problems. And I know there's a lot of discussion about VRBO complying. The reality is they are 15% of the market share. Airbnb, even though they are, I guess, probably number 2 in that space, Airbnb dominates that space with 85%. If we don't fix this, I have a concern that local entities and tourism boards are not going to get paid. If you read the Wayfair decision, it talks about an undue burden, and that's what I'm trying to fix here. I think we're dealing with something that compliance is very difficult on. It's very onerous, too onerous, and I guess I would make a statement that if we don't address this legislatively, I think the entities that are to receive this tax run the risk of not getting paid anything. That's not really been tested yet. There's not been a judgment from any court, but I just really believe that this tax system that is set up is probably going to run afoul of the Wayfair decision, and that's what I'm trying to remedy. So hopefully this starts the discussion. I've not had an opportunity to talk to the KTIA about this, so if you all want to have a discussion, let's set a meeting and talk. You've not contacted me yet, and I think this is a good start to hopefully get that fixed. We're running short on time. Any statements from committee members before we adjourn? Representative Fleming?
No, I do appreciate continuing on this discussion. There is concerns on both sides. I would like to ask both Senator West and Mr. Cheney, not right now, but down the road. Mr. Cheney brought up property rights. That's a very, very important aspect of it. We have certain jurisdictions in the Commonwealth that have concerns on how they process and go down the process, one being Jefferson County. But there are conditional use permits we got to be mindful of, because there are exceptions. We got to look at that. So it's a very delicate balancing act in order to do that, and we need to get that resolved. And I agree with the chairman that something needs to happen from a payment standpoint. Thank you very much, and I need to excuse myself for another committee meeting.
You're excused. Representative Chester Burton.
I'm not sure who answered this question, but are there other short-term rentals that are out there that are complying with House Bill 8 and paying their taxes?
Yes, Verbo is and others are, Verbo being the most significant. And the method, by the way, that they use is through a third-party processor that takes care of it, no muss, no fuss. And Airbnb actually uses that processor in other instances, but not in paying all of their Kentucky taxes.
Representative Chester Burton, to be clear, so Airbnb has agreements with about 85% of the state, 80 to 85%, because it's the folks where they're in the larger population centers. Louisville, Lexington, for instance, they paid over about $3.5 million to Louisville last year in these taxes. So it is just in the areas where they literally may have to write a handwritten check and where the city doesn't accept an electronic payment. So it is kind of a modernization part of it, but we are not, Airbnb is not dodging taxes. We're not saying we don't want to pay the tax. We're asking you to make it easy for us to pay the tax, quite simply. Thank you.
All right, given the time
Mr. Chair.
limitations, there's one more.
Mr. Chair, what was that gentleman's name? He didn't introduce himself.
He introduced himself at the beginning.
I didn't get his
Jason
name.
Underwood.
What was his name?
Jason Underwood.
Okay. I didn't hear it.
All right, we have one more question or statement from Representative Bauman, and then we're going to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for your testimony this morning. As somebody who's still trying to make a decision on this bill, I appreciate learning a little bit more about it. And I know, Mr. Cheney, you've mentioned to me that you're philosophically opposed to any type of changes to when we consider tax modernization, centralized collection, harmonization, call it whatever you'd like. But I know you were against it 10 years ago. You're against it today. And I know philosophically it sounds like you'll likely be against it 10 years from now. But we need to, as a legislature, find ways to remove burdens, especially unnecessary burdens from business in our state so we can attract business and so that we can move our state forward and the communities that we serve can thrive. It was mentioned earlier by Mr. Underwood that there's been a lot of information flying back and forth in the last few days, and I would agree with that. Some of it a little bit confusing and misleading. And so one of them that I received was from you. It didn't come directly from you, but it was passed along to me. And I believe that we need to provide the folks that are here on the other side that are for the proposal to respond to this, because it was mentioned here again today, and your words were, I'll just read it here. Hopefully the General Assembly will not allow a company that refuses to pay its bills and end run around pending litigation. I think they need to respond to that. But more than that, Mr. Cheney, I hope that you are genuine when you say that you want to come to the table and you want to talk about ways that we can, as a General Assembly, as a state, move forward to protect business, to grow business, and to ensure that our great Commonwealth thrives. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
All right. As I stated, we're not going to vote on this. I'm going to talk to some members and see how this proceeds. I think today was productive and that we've at least started the conversation on this. This meeting is adjourned.